So then we've got Trunks' sword for some freezer slicing action. Yeah, that's a long sword. That's kind of what I thought when seeing that. You look at it like, yeah, fully functional, with the exception, in my opinion, of the handle. The handle is round, as it so often is.
Do you get a lot of comments in your videos about the round handles as well?
Not so much anymore. I used to talk about that more, earlier on, but I've made my points about that. And as I said, there are historical swords with round handles, and I have seen people who can cut well with them. But even outside of edge alignment, I just don't like how they feel. It just feels a little bit better when it's either oval or a rectangular cross-section with rounded off corners, that kind of thing. But my main problem actually is all this stuff. This exists on historical swords, like some kind of metal ring or riser of some variety. They're just usually not quite as prominent because this is a fairly thick piece, so it wants to separate your hands, and I don't want that because sometimes you might want to move a little bit depending on what you're doing. This lip here on the pommel is also that kind of thing where it prevents your hand from really comfortably resting lower than that.
In Kendo, I remember they teach you about choking up and choking down. You're on the grip of your sword so that you can either gain more control or gain more strength.
Holding onto the pommel you can kind of do, but again, this raised area here is not ideal for that. But yeah, you can do it. So actually, overall it's pretty decent.
It is real steel, but it's definitely not in the battle-ready level of steel that we carry.
The balance is right, and I do like the guard, the way that's shaped. And this is interesting, this collar here. That's part of the original design, and that's. I wonder if the artist just kind of applied Japanese styling to it. Normally, European swords don't have that color. I'm guessing they probably kind of imported the habaki, so to speak, as a design element to this.
Yeah, so you can see the collar of the Suba here.
Which, I mean, you could do. You could. There's nothing saying that you can't do that with a European sword. It just wasn't generally done. And no, I could not draw this from the back. I can tell you that much. In the show, they also cheat with that. Like, whenever he puts it back, it's always like you see him reach, and then next shot, it's in.
At conventions and festivals, sometimes we say we have challenges where if you can pull out a sword from your back, we'll give you something for free. But here's the thing, depending on the way the sword sits on your back, it might actually be physically impossible. So that's entirely mean, I confess, on our part. But it shows
something.
Exactly. So people learn something from it, and it's just funny seeing all these big, strong dudes thinking that it has to do with strength or skill or something like that. It doesn't. Once again, I guess one of the takeaway points from today is physics matters.
Yeah, depending on the person. If you have particularly long arms, and it's easier if you draw it from the opposite shoulder rather than from that. I've seen it done, but it's a matter of arm length and blade length and exactly how it's attached.
So this is a foam master sword from Legend of Zelda. So just like the other foam items, there's a fiberglass core, and yeah, so this is cosplay safe, public use safe.
By the way, this is not a product review and not sponsored either. I'm just using this as a prop to talk about the design itself. But one thing I want to point out is I was surprised by just how good the foam version looks. It has a lot more detail and the finish looks way better than the steel wall hanger we're going to look at later. I've talked about the Master Sword before, like in 2015 or so, I want to say. And said that overall, there's nothing terribly wrong with it. I would change a few things, but overall, I like the look. I mean, it's iconic, obviously. They did a great job with that. There's just these decorative elements that are not excessive. It's not so much going on that it's overwhelming. It's just you have certain basic elements here that all work very well. but that adds something to the shape to make it more complex. This thing I've always found weird. It's just this lump of metal there, right? That doesn't seem to fulfill any purpose. It brings the balance further down, which at a certain point, if there's so much mass here, it might become too much, because then it's not going to hit as hard as it would if it was balanced a little bit higher up. Link, I mean, you can generate all kinds of crazy force, as we know. That adds extra weight, but if that's not an issue, if it's super light metal alloy, who knows what, or if it's just strong enough, it doesn't mind. Okay, whatever. It's not really a big deal because it doesn't get in the way as such. And yeah, I want to use it like a longsword with two hands, but of course he uses it with one hand.
Actually, fun question. We've all drawn our first swords in the elementary school. Did your sword also have like these wing-like things? Because I distinctly remember drawing my very first sword like in first grade. It was a very Legend of Zelda-esque design, even though I knew nothing about Legend of Zelda and Link's sword. Yeah?
Yeah.
I feel like everyone I've talked to, whenever I ask this question, they're like, yeah, you know what? My first sword looked kind of Master Sword-like. I'm really happy to say that we do carry many different versions of Link's Master Sword. I'm happy that you're looking at the foam one. It's, like I said, one of the most cosplayed character of all time is definitely Link.
It's such a classic sword. There's a little detail that I don't normally see commented on. It's just this little area here. I kind of like that. Yeah, like it almost seems as if they widen it here to make more space for the little Triforce. But it is just something about that. You might see something kind of similar in real swords, and this would probably be blunt. There's no reason for it to be sharp there, so in fact you could even hold it here. I don't know. It's a bit too small. This is more of a great sword technique, but in theory you could do that if you wanted to. The blade profile on this, because it's got the central ridge here and then a double fuller, which I don't remember seeing much. Yeah, I mean, what else can you say? It's very classic and for a reason.
Pretty much a metal version of what you just saw, but it is very top heavy. But I'll let you get your take on it. It is the blunted version, it's not the battle-ready version.
Ironically, it is kind of balanced the opposite that I would expect, because this handle here is lighter than it normally would be, and so that one is a bit more top-heavy. Like with this, I mean, it really depends on how you size and proportion it. This extra piece here, if it's sized like that, it really doesn't add all that much, and it could be made hollow. And that's something that I've definitely learned over time making these silly videos where I talk about how functional something would be. Sometimes they're just very simple solutions that you don't think of at the time. Like you could make something, for example, there are historical steel-headed maces that are quite large. And you look at that and you're like, that's way too heavy, what the hell? But then it turns out they're hollow. There's just something you can do about it. You can tweak it in a number of different ways. In a video from 2014, I made some minor changes to make it more functional in real life, the bottom version there. And it really didn't take all that much. Now that's assuming that the thickness is kept reasonable. Some artwork goes way overboard and makes the guards ridiculously chunky. But aside from that, you really don't have to change all that much. You really have to nitpick that much with a Master Sword, to just be like, you know, this piece, you don't really need that. The guard could be smaller, but it's all pretty nitpicky. Like, it's not a big deal, really. Even these here, like you can say, oh, well, there's something pointing at you. Okay, I just wanted to give it a bit more credit, but now I'm feeling, no, this is actually a problem. I was being too nice. So sometimes you want to tilt it back for a quicker cut, you know, just a wrist-powered cut, basically where you just do a little more than tighten your fingers and extend the arm, right? So if you do that here, that pokes you right in the hand. In this case, you could just choke down and it's still usable. Like there's enough handle, so it's not really a problem. It's just something funny to point out.
I would love to understand why they wanted to add these I don't even know what it would be called. This part of the guard here.
It's almost like bat wings, and those are the thumbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's just for kind of to offset the curves here. And just, it looks good. It looks really good. I actually like that. It's just, gets it a little bit in the way.
I quite like the battle-ready version of a design from Skyward Sword that I looked at just a few weeks ago. It was somewhat simplified, and the aluminum guard with bronze finish made it nice and light. It looked good too. I sure wouldn't mind doing some practical tests with something like that.
There are a number of different versions of the Master Sword anyway. Now, one thing I just noticed that I haven't really realized before, this piece here, you can kind of use that as a thumb rest. Now, there are some designs that have thumb rings, and that's used as kind of the same way on some sabers. It's supposed to give you a little bit more control, which it does. I'm personally actually not a big fan of it, but it does work to an extent. You could actually do that. So the only problem is then you have to really get the hand that high up, and there's the spiky right there.
Doesn't this expose you to having your thumb chopped off?
Yeah, yeah. It does. It could. That's why normally it's a ring, so that something is covering your thumb. Sure. But they did weird things. They also put a finger over the guard where they didn't even have the ring yet. They still did it.
So that's what. That's how we would train with our swords.
I mean, that's how eventually you ended up with side swords and rapiers that have a bunch of rings because people did it, and they must have found out the hard way that this can lead to problems.